Hello, everyone. I'm here to give another brief, small quarterly update on what I'm seeing going on in the wine industry. And here we are in May, and I know it's bottling season. This is the time of year when wineries are trying to get as much bottled as possible in order to prepare for not only the work that's coming up in the vineyard, but also for the future vintage that is going to be right around the corner before we know it. So, primarily, what I see is a lot of people struggling with the order in which they should be doing stabilization practices, such as cold stabilization, protein stabilization, maybe even getting the wine stabilized microbially. I also see a tendency to not know the order of operations, especially immediately before bottling. There could also be misunderstandings about when to blend and how blending may affect the wine's chemistry and stabilization. If any of this resonates with you, you're not alone. It's being noticed in a number of different operations, regardless of size. But I am here to help give you some resources. So, one of the easiest things I can provide for you is this checklist. These are available at dgwinemaking.com. This one's on white wine. There's one for white wine, rosé wine, red wine, and also for formula wines. So any of your formulaic wines that you may have, there's a checklist just for this. These work by first allocating the information for the wine that you're working on. So you could have one of these per wine. And then there is, I know it's a little difficult to see on the camera, there's a time, how long it will take before you can get to bottling by doing these steps. This is a generalized time. There may be a little bit of variation in this depending on what it is that you choose. But then the steps are also given to you in an order of which you should be going through operations. So this portion that I'm showing you right now is a little far out, but if we get closer to bottling, which there is that time point, we have 2 weeks prior to bottling, and then also 1 to 3 days prior to bottling. And some of these steps, again, like the filtration, there's a little bit of flexibility and time on that. But there's explanation in detail there. It gives you some warning levels in terms of when you complete your first stages of filtration, when you should be moving on to sterile filtration, what the temperature of the wine should be, a typical pour size, uh, schedule for filtration. If you had to make any sort of additions after filtration, so tartrate inhibitors are on here, and then also things you should check for on the day of or a day before bottling. That's on here as well as what I would recommend if you do have post-bottling issues such as fermentations or some sort of spoilage. If you had some sort of precipitate in the wine, this is the analysis I would recommend. Post bottling so that you could figure out what's going on with your wine. There's also a section for notes. So once that wine is bottled, if something did happen to it, you could record those notes here, what happened, and then we can go back and see what steps you took and when you took them, because for each step, there's a date that step was completed and also the employee that completed it, which is more for your records so that if you had a question on that step, you know who to go to. But the date is very important in these records because we can see the exact order that you went in terms of day-to-day operations. So if a problem did arise, then you can lay out the order of operations and we may be able to isolate a potential gap in terms of where something went wrong. So those check sheets are available for all DGW insiders, DGW elite members, and of course, the Denise Garner winemaking clients. If you don't have the finances right now to hire a full-time consultant, I would fully understand that. And that's really where the insider and elite memberships come into play. The insider membership gives you access to everything on the website. This is my recommendations for you in a format that's available to you anytime that you need it. You would have access to these check sheets, obviously, and with my guidance and recommendations right on the paper. And then of course the elite membership, you get access to all of that content, but you're also invited to our twice monthly Q&A sessions where you can bring your questions of your operation, or we can go through your operational orders and discuss what's going on in your operation and what you should do next. They are public forums for all of the elite members and clients, but people come and go. Sometimes there are one-on-one meetings if nobody else shows up, and it does offer you a consulting option at a very reasonable price. So if you know you're struggling through bottling season and you want to see some improvement, definitely check out those two options. I'm going to attach a link below. Other things that you may be struggling with right now that I'm noticing is really cold stabilization is coming up quite a bit. So if cold stabilization is becoming an issue, if you are seeing tartrates in your bottles, if you know that you are struggling getting through cold stabilization, period, then those are very common issues that I'm seeing right now. In truth, I'm having a lot more operations switch over to the use of tartrate inhibitors. It tends to be a better option for a lot of different wineries, usually because they don't have the ability to properly cold stabilize in their operation, especially as the weather gets warmer. And if that's you, then definitely check out some of the information that I've posted in the past. I'll provide some links again for you about cold stabilization and the use of tartrate inhibitors, or consider our memberships. And obviously, there's resources there available for that as well, including my recommendations for what to use and when to use it. So that is primarily what I'm seeing in the wine industry right now, is really getting everything bottled, really getting ready and prepared for the upcoming harvest season. I think in our next edition of a quarterly update, I'm going to talk more about getting prepared for harvest. Getting prepared early is always what I like to put out there. So if you aren't ready yet, don't worry. I'm going to get you ready by June and July, depending on where you're located in the United States and when you typically get ready to harvest. Until then, I hope everyone has a wonderful bottling season. Take care, everyone.